All right, guys, happy Thanksgiving here. Sorry to do this to you, but we got to do what we have to do. I'm talking about Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and I'm to jump through some different slides here for in a few minutes, so just be patient. And we're looking at the role of the Byzantine Empire. And Emperor Justinian, the greatest Byzantine emperor, is the sole ruler. He has complete authority. He is head of church, and he is the head of state. Something that is completely different in Western Europe. It is completely opposite. And he had a saying, there's one God, one religion, and one empire. And there are some subtle differences between Western Christianity and Eastern Christianity. We're going to go through 5 of them real quick here. First one is simply on church leadership. In the Byzantine Empire, the emperor was the head of the church. He was the pope to Western Christianity, to Catholics. He was the emperor and he was the head of state, or head of the church. He oversaw and controlled all church affairs. And this helps in controlling the hearts and the minds of the people. The people were deeply religious. And if you control the priests and the bishops, if you control the priests and the bishops, then you're going to control what the people think and what the people hear. The emperor was the patriarch of the church. So he was the father. Like, think of your grandpa at Thanksgiving. Grandpa's the patriarch and grandma's the matriarch, the 2 oldest people there. And the patriarch let me back up a little bit. The emperor is the head of the church. He is going to appoint someone, the patriarch of the church. That sneeze kind of messed me up. The patriarch is the head of the church, the head bureaucrat who will report to the emperor. The emperor is the head of church and state, but he appoints someone to solely look after the church for him and to report to him. So the patriarch is the head church official, part of the emperor's ministry, if that makes sense. The patriarch was like a cardinal in the Catholic Church or an archbishop, so to speak, completely subservient to the emperor, but he was the father of the church. He looked after it and reported what was going on to the emperor. Like cardinals and archbishops are subservient to the pope, the patriarch was subservient to the emperor. Sorry about that. That was just trying to get kick-started here in the morning. Number 2, it was the Byzantine church that controlled the lives of Christians. The church interpreted things and told them what they could and could not do. It was the entire church. In Western Europe at this time, Roman Catholics believed that it was the Pope who interpreted this. The Pope controlled the lives of Christians. Not the entire church, one single individual. So we have a difference there. Number 3, Eastern Orthodox priests could marry and have families. In Western Europe, priests could not. So in Eastern Orthodox Christianity, priests could get married and have families, but monks and bishops were not allowed to, just priests. Over in the Western Christian world, no one could get married. Not priests, not monks, not bishops. Nobody could. They considered you married to the church. Number 4, Roman Catholics could not use leavened bread, bread with no yeast. It was a flat, thin wafer. It comes from a Judaic tradition. But in the Eastern Orthodox Church, you could use like a loaf of bread with yeast in it that will puff up. May not sound like a big difference, but to these people, it really, really, really was. And the number 1 biggest difference will be the use of icons, images, paintings, mosaics, or statues of religious personnel. If you go to a Catholic church, there will be Jesus hanging on the cross, and there's usually a statue of Mary and Joseph, Jesus' parents on earth. And the idea behind that is, if you remember back in the World Religion Unit, is Catholics You know, there's a saint for everything. And you can't pray for yourself 24 hours a day, so you go to a saint, someone with special power, and you ask them, hey Mary, can you pray for me to your son Jesus? If you're in trouble and you need help, think of dads, you're going to get in trouble. A lot of people go through mom, they tell mom, so she can soften the blow coming from dad. Well, icons were strictly forbidden in the Eastern Orthodox Church. A lot of people think it's due to when Islam grows and spread, outlaws or icons were outlawed. Because many people believed, well, you were worshiping and praying to the statue, not to God. It's not really true. You're asking the saint to intercede and help you out. But that is a big, big difference. No pictures, no paintings, no stained glass of Jesus, Mary, the saints, nothing. Byzantine Emperor Leo III will outlaw this practice. When that happened, the Pope over in Rome will excommunicate the Byzantine Emperor for this decision, which means that Emperor Leo III was kicked out of the church. He was no longer allowed in. This causes a lot of anger and animosity on both sides. Both groups are Christian, but they felt their way was the only way. And this will eventually lead to what is known as the Great Schism in 1054. It is a permanent split between the two Christian churches, Roman Catholic in the West and Eastern Orthodox from Greece over. Both the Patriarch of Constantinople, the emperor's appointed church head, and the Pope in Rome will excommunicate each other. And so while this is going on, it starts to bring about the nasty collapse of the empire. Here we have the Great Schism. A lot of people hoped that there would be reunification during the Crusades, but it just simply didn't happen. But by this time, by 1054, the Byzantine Empire was beginning to struggle. After Justinian, there will be some weak emperors who, while they were constantly trying to get back and antagonize and even assassinate the Pope in Western Europe, a new empire comes about out of Asia, the Sassanid Empire. S-A-S-S-A-N-I-D, part of the old Persian Empire. So the Byzantines begin to get into it. They're fighting with the West. They're fighting over here with the Sassanid Empire. And then there is the growth and the spread of Islam. So the Byzantine Empire will find itself constantly in battle. Now this will eventually call for brief help. In 1090 BC, the Byzantine Emperor Comnenus will ask one of the great popes in Western Christianity, Pope Urban II, for assistance. And this is a big moment because when the emperor asks the Western Christian pope for help, he is acknowledging the power of the pope. He is recognizing that the pope exists. There are two separate halves of the empire, a western half and an eastern half, and two separate halves of Christianity. But he needs help. In return, Pope Urban launched the First Crusade. He had some brief hopes that the church would be reunited, that they could heal their wounds, but the behavior of some of the Western Christian knights dashed all of those hopes. First Crusade did provide necessary military assistance. The First Crusade is the only successful crusade. And Rome, in the old Western, or the Western Roman Empire, will give much needed military assistance to the Byzantine Empire. There are several crusades. The first, once again, is the only one that was successful. The Turkish Muslims are pushed back from Constantinople, and the Western European knights will liberate, so to speak, Jerusalem. They win. However, as soon as they leave, Muslims come back. And the First Crusade will have negative effects on the Byzantine Empire as well. What it did is it created a trade rivalry between Italian city-states, Venice, Naples, Bari, and they began to capitalize on merchant trade. The Crusades reopened Western Europe to cultural diffusion, to ideas of trade and technology. And the Byzantine Empire once enjoyed all of that trading in money. Now the Italian city-states learn what's over in the East and they capitalize on it. Further draining money, the Byzantine Empire is going to need. Eventually, it'll be a couple hundred years away, in 1453, the Ottoman Turks finally capture the city of Constantinople. They had been besieging it for nearly 700 years, and the emperor was given a chance to leave. The Muslim Turks said, go ahead and evacuate, but the emperor stayed. He said, what is an emperor without Constantinople? So he stayed and he gets killed. And it is the Ottoman Empire, Ottoman ruler Mehmed II, that will enter Constantinople victorious, and he will rename it Istanbul the way it stands today. But we're talking about some contributions. Constantinople remained this repository of Hellenistic culture. It's not only Greek and Egyptian and Arabic and Indian, but you add in Roman and Christian ideas as well. So it's this beautiful cosmopolitan city in the center of the world. One of my favorite cities. So we'll talk about the fall in a second. Some of the contributions that the Byzantine Empire is going to make. They are going to build on these Hellenistic ideas. They make great advancements, especially in the form of mosaics, where you get colored pieces of tile or glue or cement them into a beautiful picture, very durable. They come up with further uses of the Roman arch, but they make it a little more round, a little flatter, as you see all of these domes. This was a famous cathedral turned into a mosque known as the Hagia Sophia. Byzantine artwork, scholars are going to make the Bible come to life instead of just writing the stories. So think of like a graphic novel for people who couldn't read. Think of stained glass windows. They drew pictures acting out what was going on. And they began to incorporate in their towers and pillars other types of architecture, not just Greek, but they add in, Greek plus Roman, plus a little bit of Persian, Egyptian, and even Arabic building styles in their towers and minarets with cones on tops and decorations. So you really see this cosmopolitan blend in the architecture in and around Constantinople, Istanbul. If you ever get a chance, I really think you guys should go. And all this was carrying on the legacy of Alexander the Great. Most importantly, as Western Europe was collapsing into the Dark Ages, it was the Byzantine monks, the Byzantine scholars, who from the time Rome fell up to the Crusades preserved classical works of learning. Greco-Roman learning, the stuff that existed in Alexander's House of Muses, they preserved learning all the way back to ancient Greece. And so while Western Europe collapses into their disastrous 600 years, the Byzantine Empire is they become this repository of culture and learning. Even after their fall, the Ottoman Empire, who conquers the Byzantine, they allowed many of the scholars to travel, back and forth to learn things, and it is these Eastern scholars who will travel into Western Europe during the height of the Renaissance that begins this re-education, this cultural flowering that will actually be a big boost and kick off what we know as the Renaissance in the West. If not for the scholars leaving, heading back westward with Christian teachings and education, who knows what the Renaissance may have been. Another reason for the collapse of the Byzantine Empire is a Mongol invasion and the Silk Road. It is the famous coming of the Black Death. The fleas, if you guys ask me when we get back to tell you how the plague got started, I most assuredly will. The Black Plague is not one incident. It happens reoccurring times over and over and over again throughout the Middle Ages. It's not a one-set piece deal. And the year 542, right at the height of the Byzantine Empire, about 10,000 people are going to die a day. It was huge. And there are outbreaks for decades after this. So the Black Plague is really a hindrance to the Byzantine Empire. While that is going on, the plague breaks out. It is the wars with the Sassanid Empire. It is the wars with the growing spread of Islam 80 years later. It is weak emperors that will lead finally to the collapse of the Great Byzantine Empire in 453. We'll get back to this. Here's a map of the Black Plague, how it spreads. Not really sure where it came from, but most people believe it starts here in East Asia. China travels the Silk Road and makes it all the way over to the Byzantine Empire and eventually over into Europe. What a lot of people don't talk about is, yes, we know it devastated Western Europe, but the plague also spread to the Middle East, and to South Asia and East Asia as well. It killed people in Europe and in Asia. It was not just one isolated incident. And as you can see, up to 25 million people die in China as well as a result of the Black Plague. That goes all the way down to the Middle East, down to the bottom of South Africa, a little bit into East Africa, and then up into Europe. So that is done. We'll talk about the plague later in Western Europe. But right now, what we are going to talk about is the rise of Russia. Russia kind of gets left out of a lot because it's so big and it's so vast, and it's not till the Mongols show up that people talk about it. Well, we're going to do a comprehensive job here. Russia is the largest country in the world based on square mileage. It's big. It starts in the Pacific Ocean over in Asia and comes all the way across to the Baltic Sea in Europe. It is just massive. And the first Russian civilization will start in what is today the Ukraine. You may hear about it with Vladimir Putin down here on the Crimean Peninsula, where the Black Plague makes its way over into Europe. Remember to ask me about that. And because Russia is there, and we know it gives validity to the world Eurasia, combining Europe and Asia, the Ural Mountains in Europe are the dividing line. People on the east side of the Ural Mountains look more Asiatic, like you would think Inuits or Eskimos, and the people on the west side of the Ural Mountains look more Western European Caucasian. But the continent spans, or the country spans both continents. But it is the Ukraine, as I was saying, talking about Vladimir Putin, that is where the first civilization is going to grow. The Ukraine is located on the steppes. It's a giant flat area. It's wide open. It's like a pancake griddle. There's no natural barriers. I call it the world's largest field. I mean, it's just big, which is why, some people want it so bad.